The moment Ethan Caldwell signed away ownership of the family ranch, his father smiled. It was the first smile Ethan had seen on his face after months of legal battles. No one in the courtroom could understand why the man who had spent more than a decade protecting that land was willing to let it go so easily. Beyond the courthouse windows, the Montana sky stretched across the horizon in a cold shade of gray. Low clouds hung heavily over the distant fields. Ethan sat quietly beside his attorney, his expression so calm that it was impossible to read. Mark Sullivan leaned slightly toward him. "We still have a chance. If you agree, I can continue the appeal." Ethan did not answer right away. Instead, memories drifted through his mind. Harsh winters, long sleepless nights fighting snowstorms to save the livestock, tax bills piling up on the kitchen table, bank loans he had carried entirely on his own. For 12 years, while the ranch stood on the edge of financial collapse, no one in his family showed up. His father stayed in the city. His sister built a life of her own. They only returned when land prices in the region began to soar. And that was when the arguments started. Lawyers' letters arrived. Mediation meetings failed one after another. Slowly, Ethan came to understand something painful. What they wanted had never been family. What they wanted was the land. Across the room, Richard Caldwell sat upright with quiet confidence. Vanessa Caldwell exchanged whispers with their attorney. In their eyes, today's outcome was already decided. But Ethan saw it differently. He no longer wanted to win. He no longer wanted to prove anything. Some battles drag on for so long that people stop caring about who is right and who is wrong. They simply want to be free. When the court clerk placed the documents in front of him, Ethan picked up the pen. No hesitation. No second thoughts. He signed every page with certainty. And in that moment, everyone believed the story was over. What none of them knew was that the ranch's biggest secret was still hidden inside the very file that had just been handed to the other side. The file had barely reached the Caldwell family's attorney when something unexpected happened. The man who had carried himself with absolute confidence throughout the entire hearing suddenly froze. He flipped back one page, then another. The smile slowly faded from Vanessa's face. Richard Caldwell frowned. "What is it?" The attorney did not answer right away. He studied every line as though he had discovered something that was never supposed to be there. The atmosphere inside the courtroom changed. No one spoke. Even the judge looked up from her paperwork. Finally, the attorney rose to his feet. "Your Honor, there appears to be a legal agreement attached to the ownership of this ranch." The room fell silent. The judge accepted the document and spent several minutes reviewing it. Then she turned toward the Caldwell family. "According to records that were legally filed years ago, the entire property is enrolled in the state's Environmental Conservation Program." Vanessa immediately straightened in her chair. "What does that mean?" The judge answered calmly. "The ranch cannot be divided into separate lots. It cannot be developed into a resort. It cannot be sold for commercial real estate projects. All environmental preservation standards must remain fully intact, and all costs associated with maintaining those obligations now belong to the new owners." The color drained from Vanessa's face. Just weeks earlier, she had secretly been negotiating with a major development company interested in purchasing part of the land for an enormous sum of money. Richard turned toward his attorney in disbelief. "Why weren't we told about this?" The attorney let out a slow breath. Everything was publicly recorded in the property documents. No one hid anything. Then he slowly looked across the room at Ethan. "It's just that no one bothered to read the entire file." For the first time since the hearing began, Vanessa looked at her younger brother differently. The contempt was gone. In its place was concern. Meanwhile, Ethan remained perfectly still, calm, almost as if he had known this exact moment was coming for a very long time. No argument erupted afterward. No one slammed a hand on the table. No one raised their voice in protest, because everyone in the room understood that the decision had already been made. After a few final moments of review, the judge closed the file. Ownership of the ranch was officially transferred to Richard Caldwell and Vanessa Caldwell. The courtroom fell into silence. It was the kind of silence that appears when people realize that what they have won is not at all what they imagined. Richard stared down at the documents in front of him. For years, he had believed Ethan was desperately trying to hold on to a valuable asset. But now, for the first time, he understood that his son had actually been carrying an enormous responsibility on his shoulders. Vanessa came to the same realization. Her plan to sell the land had vanished within minutes. What remained were long-term legal obligations and unavoidable conservation expenses that would follow the property for years to come. Meanwhile, Ethan slowly rose from his chair. He said nothing. He did not gloat. He did not celebrate. And he felt no regret. Attorney Mark Sullivan followed him into the hallway. He studied Ethan for a long moment before shaking his head. "I still don't understand." "You could have kept all of it." A faint smile appeared on Ethan's face. It was the first smile he had shown all day. "I didn't want to keep something that cost me my entire life." With that, he walked out of the courthouse. The afternoon sunlight had finally broken through the gray clouds. Behind him stood the ranch his family had fought so hard to obtain. Ahead of him was a future with no clear plan. Yet for the first time in many years, Ethan felt at peace. Because some things are worth more than land. Some victories cannot be measured by ownership papers. And sometimes, the strongest way to end a battle is to let go. If you were Ethan, would you have continued fighting for the ranch? Or would you have chosen to walk away as he did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful and emotional stories like this one.